In fact, in the Greek, the phrase being built together, here's what it means in the Greek language. The act of one who promotes another's growth. Did you hear that? Being built together is the act of one who promotes another's growth. Meaning this, for growth and healing to take place in our relationships and our community, it cannot be self-centered. When self becomes the center, the process of growing together, being built together, it breaks down because it removes the focus of the foundation, Christ, from the center. And when self becomes the center, we're not looking to promote the healing and growth of the other people involved. And that leads to a breakdown, not a build-up. A breakdown and not a build-up. That's what Jesus said in John 15. He says, what is greatest love? What's the demonstration of greater love? There's no greater love than what? Than if one person lays down one's life, their mind, will, their soul, for another. In order to be built together, to grow together, to journey together. Now, what's going to help in this process of being built together? What's things that need to be evident for this being built together, being fitted together to take place? Grace and truth. In fact, in John 1:17, talking about Jesus, it says, for the law was given through Moses, but grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. Notice Jesus, who was the answer of God, who was the very image of God on the earth. Notice how the answer from God came on the earth in Jesus, full of grace and truth. And if God has designed that part of the answer of healing and growth that He wants to come into your life is to flow through other members of the body, then just like Jesus came in grace and truth, we have to come to one another with grace and truth. With grace and truth. Jesus was full of both. What is grace? Grace is empowering. It's not final. Yes, there's some areas that's currently in your life that don't fit in your life, and it's hindering us from experiencing the best marriage, the best relationships, the best God can do in a community of believers. But grace says, I will change it. I will heal it. I will empower it. Grace says, it's not over yet. The sun's not set on your race and purpose. Grace can enable you to get up and empower you to move forward so that we can be built together, we can grow together, because it's built upon the foundation not of what we've done but what Christ has done. Paul says that we're to impart grace to one another in Ephesians 4:29. Let no corrupt word proceed out of your mouth, but what is good for necessary edification, that it may impart grace to the hearers. Notice that when we come in the atmosphere of relationships, grace is what? It is to edify. It's to build up. It's to say, listen, I know maybe you're hurting right now, but God has a provision for that area. I know it's difficult right now, but don't throw in the towel. God's got grace. He's got His sufficiency. He's got His power and ability for that area of your life. We speak grace to one another. Not condemnation, not that you're a failure and yes, you messed up and God can't use you now and it's over. No, grace says it's not over. It's not over. God's not giving up on you. He's got grace to raise you up and for you to finish the course He has for you and the assignment and purpose for you. But then Paul also talks about speaking the truth in love in Ephesians 4:15, but speaking the truth in love may grow up in all things into Him who is the head, Christ, from whom the whole body, joined and knit together by what every joint supplies, according to the effective working by which every part does its share, causes growth of the body for the edifying of itself in love. Notice what he says, speak truth in love. Why? That we may grow up. Without there being grace, that it's not over, that things can change. God does have the ability to work in this situation. Without that atmosphere of grace and empowerment and building up, but also without an atmosphere of truth, growth and healing can't take place. Listen, dysfunction has to be called dysfunction. Dishonesty's got to be called dishonesty. Character flaws need to be called character flaws. But notice it's speaking truth. Here's where people mess up all the time. It's not speaking our opinion. It's speaking truth. Truth that's rooted in God's truth. So speaking our opinions, not speaking the truth. I think, I feel, that's not going to help nobody. Speaking truth is based on the nature and the nurture of Scriptures, of what God has done and what God has said. Ephesians 4:20, Paul talking to believers, he says, "But you have not so learned Christ that way, if indeed you've heard Him and have been taught by Him, as the truth is in Jesus." The more we follow Jesus, the more our lives, listen, live in truth. The more open we are, the more honest we are, the more our life is integrated, the more we're able to integrate and plug in with others. Why? Because we don't have to hide anything, because we know there's always grace that can change what the devil said we had to hide. That there's always the power of God available to heal where the devil said you got to hide the hurt. That there's grace that can raise you up from your failure where the devil said you had to hide it. There's grace that can raise you up. And therefore we can open our lives to the truth of God and the light of God. And the light will always drive out darkness. Hallelujah. So listen. Notice the truth is connected to putting off the things that don't fit our lives and putting on the things that does fit. In our relationships with one another, in our career and the way God's designed us, that speaking the truth speaks to dealing with the things that don't fit and speaking the truth about what does fit. That's the context of grace and truth. We're to help each other in this process of learning to hear from Christ, learning to follow Christ, learning to be taught by Christ. We're to help guard each other as our spiritual senses are being exercised, as Hebrews 5:14 says.